Good afternoon, everybody. I know not many people are going to be watching this because it's Saturday afternoon and it's beautiful out, but I wanted to do this video before I forgot. And lately the videos have been hit and miss as I've been trying to enjoy life after the pandemic, but this video I really wanted to do all week, so I hope you find it really helpful. I am also recording on another camera to my left, so if you see me turn my head, that's why. And camera to the left, I'll predominantly be looking at the laptop recording to this. In this video, we're looking at a bacteria group called Acromanzia Municiphila. So the reason I wanted to discuss this is that I've spoken over the years and I've done a lot of podcasts on how our microbes or our gut bacteria impact our overall health, but not just our overall health, our physical health as well, in a sense of tissue quality and how we break down fats and how we use certain energies and stuff is very much dependent on the bacteria that are inside us. So two main phylums of bacteria in us, and I'm trying to talk slow just so I don't overwhelm or confuse anyone, but two main bacteria phylums inside us are called firmicutes and bacteroidetes. So the firmicutes, although they start with the word firm, they do not make us firm. Unfortunately, they make us obese and unhealthy. Whereas the bacteroidetes, those little guys are our friends. Those guys are the ones that they make us lean and healthy and strong and resilient. We want lots of those, and there's many studies showing that the higher ratio of bacteroidetes you have, the leaner, the slimmer, the healthier you generally are. And there's an abundance of studies showing that the higher number of firmicutes that you have, the more obese and unhealthy you're going to be. And we especially see conditions of blood pressure, arteriosclerosis, fatty liver disease, and other stuff in people that have higher ratios of bacteroidetes. Firmicutes. And while we're on this topic of firmicutes, the favorite food of a firmicute is that combination of high fat, high sugar, which I've spoke about avoiding a lot because of the creation of lipopolysaccharides and other stuff, but that is their preferred fuel source. Now below those guys, in those guys, there's a group of guys called Acromanzia Municiphila, and I have some studies open in front of me, and once I'm finished recording this on Facebook, I'll post the studies. And then if I post this on YouTube, I'll try and post the links to the studies as well. But I've spoken about Akkermansia before. Now, Akkermansia are these amazing little bacteria that we want to have lots and lots and lots of. These guys are called carbon feeders, so they feed on carbon. Now, if you've been following my posts over the last few days on Facebook, and what I've been trying to kind of drive home to people is, like I just did there, I sighed. When we inhale oxygen. When we exhale CO2. So I'm exhaling carbon. Now, if you did nothing at all for quite a long time and you just inhaled and exhaled, exhale, you would exhale a lot of carbon, right? Now, when we look at carbon is pretty much the backbone to a lot of the molecules in our body. So when we look at fat in itself, so a fat is a molecular combination of carbon bonds. So we've got long chain fatty acids, which is a long chain of carbon bonds. So if I sat here for long enough just breathing in and out and I didn't eat anything, my body of course has to survive. So what it's going to do is, in order to get the carbon, my body's going to break down those fat molecules and break the bonds. So some of the bond is going to go and provide energy into the mitochondria, and that free floating carbon that gets exhaled. So if I did that long enough, I would potentially exhale most of my body fat. So I would lose body fat because I'm exhaling carbon. So back to the Akkermansia, those guys are carbon feeders. Now, if fat cells are made up of long chains of carbon molecules and the Akkermansia eat carbon, then you can kind of see what I'm getting at and how they're going to be so beneficial for us. So Akkermansia, this bacteria, it makes us a very efficient fat burner. The more Akkermansia we have, the more efficiently we're going to break down our own body fat for energy and lose weight. But not only that, there's huge connections to the health benefits of having an abundance of Akkermansia, including the repair of damaged gut lining or the epithelial cells. So if you think of the tissue along your gut, that's called the epithelial cells or the gut lining. So we see there's a lot of studies that connect having a lot of Akkermansia to the repair of the epithelial cells. So we see that Acromanzia Municiphila is a mucin degrading bacteria believed to contribute to intestinal health and glucose homeostasis. And I'm going to post this study below, or a couple of studies. So the one I'm looking at right now is the gut microbiome after bariatric surgery. And we know that after bariatric surgery, there is a lot of dysbiosis, generally because you have removed a lot of bacteria. You've also messed around with the digestive tract. So I will share that. There's also a lot to show that having an abundance of Akkermansia helps with intestinal permeability, which is what I just mentioned about that gut cell lining. Also reduced serum of triglycerides and improved insulin resistance. So there's a lot going on there. So we see there's an abundance to having Akkermansia. So Akkermansia, they help us get lean. They help us get healthy. They help us break down our own fat cells for energy. They repair damaged gut lining. They make our guts actually more resilient as well. But how do we get Akkermansia in our diet? Well, one thing we know is that we see a huge reduction in Akkermansia in high fat diets. And I'm not just talking about the bad toxic fats, I am talking about also a high portion of your diet coming from so-called good fats as well. And this can come back to genetic traits and how each individual body uses different fuel sources for what. But we see, and I see it all the time, that I have many clients that do not do well on a high fat diet. Even if it is good fats, it needs to be, I generally need to mess around with their macros and make sure they're getting their good fats, which are essential for health when we look at hormones and skin health and all this other stuff, cell membranes. But we need to keep them at a certain kind of percentage just to make sure that everything is working right and they're not gaining too much weight, because that then has its own issues as well. So we know that when we have an increase in fat in our diet and sugar, we're seeing lower levels of Akkermansia, and also alcohol too inhibits the production of Akkermansia. And alcohol, it's a double-edged coin. I don't really like the word balance, but I do feel we need to use it, because you'll see in a minute there are some alcohols that are going to be very beneficial to Akkermansia, but then we also have to have those amounts or those ratios correct as well. So we want to watch for high amounts of fat, high amounts of sugar, and high amounts of alcohol. Okay, so we got that. So then what can we do? Well, one, go back to what I said about Akkermansia are carbon feeders. So they eat carbon, they eat fat for energy, and they give us energy as well. The more Akkermansia we have, the better we're going to be able to break down our own body fat cells and use that for energy. Now, carbon, let's think about it. Akkermansia are carbon feeders. How do we produce more carbon? Well, we pant, we get out of breath, we increase our heart rate, so therefore or exercise is great for producing more Akkermansia. And many people are going to be like, yeah, I know that. Well, on some level, you knew that exercise and being lean had a connection. Well, here is a biological connection that's happening. Also, by panting, not everyone can do high intensity exercise. So one thing I like to encourage my clients to do is rebounding, which not only is going to improve your cardiovascular health and your Acromansia ratios, but also then, of course, your lymphatic system and circulation and all that. I really like the Stairmaster for increasing Ackermansia amounts. Not only are you able to kind of vary the resistance and the speed, get your heart rate up and down, it's a very safe tool in my opinion, but I understand some people may have injuries, so do talk to a trainer before you get onto a machine that you're not too sure of how to use. The elliptical is very safe as well. The treadmill is awesome if you can use it without holding onto it. Do not run on the treadmill though. It's not something I would advise. You can always just walk at a fast pace on incline. Dancing is another one for creating that panting sensation. Hiking, we know there's so many benefits to hiking on elevation for increasing not only fat burning but also how we utilize fat stores due to the changes in the oxygen pressure. So there's some ideas on how to improve the Ackermansia through the cardio, but in a sense you want to be thinking, the more I can pant, the more I can get out of breath, the more Ackermansia I'm going to produce. And then once you have them produced, you want to continue to support them with nutrition though, and there's a lot of nutritional interventions you can use to increase your levels of Akkermansia, but also support the levels that maybe you're building through some sort of cardio exercise. So cardio, they're carbon feeders. The more you can pant, the more carbon they're going to be able to feed on, the better they're going to break down your fat cells, the more requirement they're going to have for carbon. So they're going to have to break down more fat cells, which, remember, I discussed a few minutes ago, fat cells are long chains of carbon bonds. The more Akkermansia you have, the more you get out of breath, the more of an energy demand you put on your body for carbon, the more you're going to break down fat cells. And while doing this, you're going to be repairing this, that, and the other. I mentioned a few minutes ago, before I go on to the nutritional interventions, I mentioned that we see the ratios of higher Akkermansia have been, and I can give you the name of this study, which I'm also going to post as well. So this study is germ-free mouse technology and cardiovascular research, done in the microbiome and metabiome in diagnosis, therapy, and other strategic applications study 2019. Although it does say mouse, it does discuss individuals, and they see that it was demonstrated that intervention with A. Municiphila, which is the Ackermansia, decreased intestinal permeability and reduced serum LPS levels. Very positive. I'll share that down below. But what we're doing is we're healing the gut at the same time. And I did that post the other day that showed the connection between those who are fitter or exercise more generally have healthier guts. I've posted studies in the past as well about bloating and dysbiosis of the gut has been connected to having weak core muscles and weak abdominals, which is why I'm always telling my clients, I want you to do 10 minutes of abs nearly every day, or at least before you go for a walk. So there's a huge connection there. But again, now we're seeing that biological connection and how these are connecting specifically through this sect of bacteria. So moving on to the nutritional interventions, and this is going to be really quickly. So most of the nutritional interventions that we see that support the growth of Akkermansia, and these also go hand in hand what I've discussed with sirtuins and sirt foods, so turning genetic factors on and off, and modbiotics, which we use for good gut health, and all this sort of stuff. They all go hand in hand. You see, they all kind of cross wires. So these are very polyphenol rich foods, but specifically for the promotion of Akkermansia, we're seeing a specific sect of these polyphenols that seem to be stronger than others. So what we're seeing is cranberry extract, but cranberries in themselves, organic, fresh, or if you can get them frozen, defrost them, munch on them, they're going to be great. Organic green apples, which I sound like a broken record at this stage, but they're amazing for helping the gut not only provide the fiber and the carbon, because when we digest apples, we create butyric acid in the gut, which then can help with that carbon breakdown as well. So it all goes hand in hand. They're going to be great for Akkermansia. At this time of the year, and I have one outside and I haven't chopped it down, I'm embracing the craziness of nature. So I have this rhubarb tree, which is like yay high and nearly coming in my kitchen window. Rhubarb, we see, is very good for the promotion or the proliferation of Akkermansia. And if you've ever ate raw rhubarb, it's lovely, but it's like super tart, but it's lovely, and it's that tart sourness, that's that good stuff that the Akkermansia loves and helps with the promotion of the Akkermansia. And back to the very beginning, also those bacteroidetes too, and that's through that kind of modbiotic pathway that I've spoke about in the past. So we've got also here grapes, specifically Concord grapes, but this then ties back into our alcohol. So what we see is red wine, which many of us know has many benefits, but not when you drink a bottle a night, not when you're drinking like 3 bottles a day. Red wine in like a small glass or 2, a couple of evenings a week, in regards to health, can be very beneficial because of these polyphenols and flavonoids. So red wine is a big factor in the sirtuin diet, for example, but also here has the connection to enhancing Akkermansia. But once you start to go over kind of that 2 glasses too often, then you're starting, the negatives are outweighing the positives. So you have to have that balance. So we've got our rhubarb, we've got our cranberries, we've got our grapes, specifically Concord grapes. We have a really good red wine. Of course, you want it organic, and if you can get it biodynamic, because remember, if you're ingesting herbicides and pesticides, we put them on plants to kill bacteria. If we ingest them, we're killing our own bacteria. I mean, that's just simple logic. Some other things that help to promote Akkermansia as well are metformin, which is used with diabetics to help them manage blood insulin and sugar levels. But my favorite alternative to metformin, which myself and lots of my clients use, is berberine. Now, berberine has many benefits in the gut. So berberine is a herb, but you can get it in a pill. It's very rich in polyphenols. Berberine has great antibiotic, antimicrobial, antifungal properties. Like, berberine is amazing, and it is an alternative to metformin that actually has no negative side effects, but lots and lots of positive benefits. But we see here that berberine also, and it is going to be in one of the studies below, is connected directly to having higher levels of Akkermansia in the gut. So berberine, so many of you will have heard of metformin. Well, berberine, if you're following me, you will have heard of that before. I have a couple of posts in here in the Facebook biohacking group on berberine specifically. I'm going to start wrapping this up now because it's too beautiful to be recording a video. There is, in this study I'm looking at, there's some mention of fructooligosaccharides. I'm not a big fan of fructose, as many people know, although I do encourage the consumption of fructose, but just manage that balance of specific foods and specific levels, blah, blah, blah. But oligosaccharides, one of my favorite sources of oligosaccharides, and I've mentioned this before, this is why it is my favorite, because it feeds those good bacteria, is from dates. Now dates, you can easily go to town on dates. They're very high in sugar, they can be high in calories if you go to town on them, but you can get dates into your diet, and they are going to help with that proliferation again of Akkermansia. The FODMAP diet as well has been suggested in 2 human studies to promote Acromanzia Municiphila. And what else? Let me just drive through here. Yeah, that's pretty much, those are going to be your main sources. One thing I will throw in here, and this is super important because there's a lot of confusion about specific nutritional templates out there, and each one has its pros and its cons. It really does. But one thing that is consistent with being human, being an omnivore, is the consumption of high quality animal products. High quality animal proteins and products, they provide us with not only a huge variety of bacteria in them, but also they do provide us with some very healthy fats, which again are carbon. So you're getting this double whammy. You're also getting essential amino acids that you cannot get from vegetables or grains. Like, you can only get certain nutrients from animal products. Like B12 is produced in our gut by our bacteria through the consumption of animal meats. This is why vegans and some vegetarians will need to supplement or get interventions of B12, because their body is not producing B12 from the animal products because they're not consuming them. But animal products are known to promote good gut bacteria through an abundance of cycles that come from ingesting animal products. But that is one thing that is true all through time from human beings being omnivores. Even when we look at so-called vegans in other cultures and how they survived, a lot of the time they're getting their proteins from ingesting insects on their vegetables or fruits as well, which will provide those amino acids and the base for the B12 production. And I'm not trying to naysay vegan or anything. I'm just trying to highlight the fact that getting a good amount of animal proteins and products is going to support this growth of Akkermansia too. And lastly, before I let you go, because I didn't realize we were at 22 minutes, along with fasting, calorie restriction has been shown to help with the increase of Akkermansia. Calorie restriction, how we used to think of it back in the day, immediately we all have a negative relationship to calorie restriction. But now we know so much that we can mix and blend calorie restriction with refeed days, with carb backloading, with fasting days, as long as you can get over that uncomfortable hunger feeling, which I really believe many people should not fear that feeling of hunger. Once we get past that, we're able to blend all of these different eating styles together to benefit from everything, from the growth of the Akkermansia, from the increase in the fat burning, from increasing human growth hormone, improving sleep. So there's an abundance of things. But like I said, so I started off years ago in Weight Watchers, and their whole concept is calorie restriction, and the thoughts of it somewhat now makes me cringe, and I'm like, how did I ever do that? But now we know so much. You could be doing one day of a fast, you could do one day of a refeed, you could do a couple days of calorie restriction. You can blend everything to make it more comfortable. And once you know enough about nutrition, then you can take the foods that you like and implement them where possible. And I'll say where possible, because if you're working with a health professional and they feel they're inflammatory or negative in some way, then they're going to say no. But you can use, once you have all the knowledge, you can use everything you need. Okay, back to this. I'm going to summarize it just like this. Is if you can increase the amount of Akkermansia, so that bacteria in your gut that feed on carbon, if you can increase them, you can become a more efficient fat burner yourself through all the processes I've just listed above. And you can also improve your gut permeability or your gut lining health and its resiliency, and many other factors to help get improved as well. So take notes, watch over this again, and that should be your focus, especially for many of you that I know are just in maintenance mode for the summer. Stay in maintenance mode, but make sure that you're shifting your focus. Well, hey, if I can improve my levels of Akkermansia now and have them topped up for, say, September, then I'm already ahead of the game then. Whew, I hope you found this really helpful. I'm going to enjoy the sun, and I encourage you to too. Take care, everyone, and we'll chat soon. Bye-bye.